A perfect baby shower, a loving husband, a successful businesswoman 7 months pregnant, living her dream life. But when Catherine noticed the way her husband looked at the mysterious woman in the navy dress, when she saw that familiar gesture between strangers, everything she believed about her marriage crumbled in an instant. What Catherine discovered next wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated conspiracy that had been destroying her life for months while she planned for their future together. But Derek made one fatal mistake. He underestimated the woman he married. This is the story of how a pregnant wife turned the tables on the people who thought they could destroy her. And trust me, you won't see the ending coming. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story of ultimate revenge. Drop a comment with your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this don't come around often. Let's dive in. Catherine Martinez stood in her Silicon Valley penthouse kitchen, watching the morning fog roll across the bay while her espresso machine hummed. At 29, she'd built TechFlow Solutions from her garage into a $15 million startup, now 7 months pregnant. She was supposed to be slowing down. Instead, she was planning the perfect baby shower. "Honey, you're doing too much," Derek called from the Marble Island, scrolling through his phone with that intense focus that meant work. Her husband of 3 years looked every inch the successful investment banker in his tailored shirt, even at 7 a.m. "Maya can handle the party planning." Catherine pressed her hand to her rounded belly, feeling their son's morning kicks. "I want everything perfect for him, for us." She gestured toward the living room, already transformed with soft gray and white decorations. "Besides, it's good practice for balancing work and motherhood." Derek's phone buzzed. His expression shifted slightly as he read the message. A micro-expression Catherine's business instincts caught, but dismissed. "Speaking of work, I might need to bring a client by the party. Sophia Chen, big account, and she's been asking to meet you. A client to our baby shower." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "That's a bit unusual." "She's different. Young entrepreneur. Reminds me of you, actually. I think you'd like her." Derek's smile was practiced, the same one he used in board meetings. "She's been instrumental in some major deals lately." Catherine nodded, distracted by her mental checklist. Flowers, check. Caterer arriving at 11, check. Photographer, check. She'd built her company by obsessing over details, and this day would be no different. The doorbell chimed, and Maya Rodriguez appeared with her usual energy, arms full of gift bags. Catherine's business partner and best friend had been her anchor through every startup crisis, every sleepless night of coding, every investor rejection. "Pregnant lady should not be stress cleaning at 7:30 in the morning," Maya announced, hugging Catherine carefully. "That's what you pay people for." "I'm not stress cleaning. I'm quality controlling." Catherine laughed, but Maya's dark eyes were already scanning Derek with that lawyer-like attention she'd inherited from her prosecutor mother. "Morning, Derek. Working weekends again." Maya's tone held just enough edge to qualify as professional courtesy rather than warmth. "Big project closing Monday. You know how it is." Derek pocketed his phone quickly. "I'll leave you ladies to your party prep. Need to hit the gym before guests arrive." After Derek left, Maya turned to Catherine with an expression that had preceded every difficult business conversation they'd ever had. "Kath, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think before answering." Catherine's stomach tightened, though she blamed the baby. "What's wrong?" "When's the last time Derek talked about your future together?" "Not the baby, not the house, not the investments. You two, as partners." The question hit unexpectedly. Catherine realized she couldn't remember. Their recent conversations revolved around logistics, doctor appointments, nursery furniture, financial planning. Even their intimate moments felt scheduled around her pregnancy symptoms and his work demands. Maya, we're about to become parents. Everything's about the future right now. That's not what I mean. Maya moved closer, lowering her voice. Remember when James and I were having problems last year? The distance started with small things, different priorities, separate futures disguised as shared ones. Catherine felt the first flutter of unease. Derek's been under enormous pressure at work. Once the baby comes, things will settle. Maya studied her friend's face with the intensity that made her such a successful business partner. She saw everything, the slight defensiveness, the way Catherine's hand moved protectively to her belly, the micro-doubt flickering behind her eyes. But Maya also knew Catherine. Brilliant, driven, loyal to a fault. Once Catherine committed to something, whether a business strategy or a marriage, she gave everything. It was her greatest strength and her most dangerous vulnerability. Okay, Maya said simply. Just promise me something. Trust your instincts today. The same instincts that built our company from nothing. They've never failed you in business. Catherine nodded, though she wasn't sure what she was agreeing to. As Maya began arranging flowers, Catherine watched the fog lift from the bay. The perfect day was beginning, just as she'd planned. She had no idea that by sunset, her perfect life would be shattered into pieces she'd spend months learning to rebuild. By 2 p.m., Catherine's penthouse buzzed with laughter and conversation. 35 guests mingled among the carefully curated decorations, cooing over the gift table and sampling artisanal appetizers. Catherine moved through the crowd like a gracious hostess, accepting congratulations and pregnancy advice with practiced smiles. Derek played his role perfectly. Attentive husband, proud father-to-be, successful provider. He kept his hand on Catherine's back when they stood together, refilled her water glass before she asked, and told the story of their first ultrasound with genuine warmth. To everyone watching, they were the ideal couple. Catherine was accepting compliments on the party decorations from Derek's mother when the doorbell rang. Derek moved quickly to answer it, his eagerness subtle but noticeable to Catherine's trained eye. Catherine, I'd like you to meet Sophia Chen. The woman who entered was striking in a way that made other women instinctively check their own appearance. Mid-20s, with glossy black hair and the kind of effortless style that cost significant money to achieve. She wore a cream-colored dress that managed to be both appropriate for a baby shower and subtly stunning. Catherine, it's wonderful to finally meet you, Sophia said, her voice carrying a slight accent that suggested international education. Derek talks about you constantly. And congratulations on TechFlow's latest funding round. Impressive work. Catherine felt simultaneously flattered and off balance. Sophia had done her homework. Thank you. Derek mentioned you're an entrepreneur too. Import-export, mainly tech components from Asia. It's how I met Derek, actually. His bank has been invaluable for international transactions. Sophia's smile was warm, but her eyes held an intensity that reminded Catherine of herself in negotiation mode. Maya appeared at Catherine's elbow, carrying her usual arsenal of social intelligence. Maya Rodriguez, Catherine's business partner. What kind of tech components? The question was casual, but Catherine recognized Maya's interview technique. Friendly surface, probing depth. Semiconductors, mainly. The market's fascinating right now with all the supply chain disruptions. Sophia's answer was smooth, knowledgeable. Catherine, I brought something for the baby. The gift was elegant, expensive, a handcrafted mobile with subtle Asian artistic influences. Catherine genuinely loved it, which somehow made her feel worse about her growing unease. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. Derek helped me choose it. He has excellent taste. The comment was innocent enough, but something in Sophia's tone made Catherine glance at her husband. Derek was watching the exchange with an expression she couldn't read. The afternoon progressed with games and gift opening. Catherine performed her role flawlessly, but part of her mind was cataloging details. The way Sophia seemed to know exactly where everything was in the apartment. How Derek's laugh sounded different when Sophia spoke. The fact that Sophia's gift was positioned prominently on the present table, as if Derek had placed it there personally. During the baby name guessing game, Catherine noticed Derek and Sophia standing near the kitchen, their conversation looking more intimate than professional. She watched as Sophia touched Derek's arm lightly while making a point, the gesture lasting just long enough to cross the line from casual to familiar. Maya followed Catherine's gaze. "Interesting client relationship," she murmured. "Maya, don't. I'm just observing. It's what I do." Maya's expression was carefully neutral. How long did Derek say he's been working with her? Catherine realized she didn't know. Derek had mentioned Sophia sporadically over recent months, always in business contexts, but now she couldn't remember specific details. When had Sophia become important enough to invite to their baby shower? A few months, I think. Maya sipped her sparkling water. "I'm going to mingle." Catherine watched Maya approach Derek and Sophia, inserting herself into their conversation with practiced ease. Whatever Maya said made Derek laugh, but Sophia's smile looked forced. The afternoon's highlight was supposed to be Catherine's thank you speech. She'd prepared remarks about gratitude, friendship, and the journey to motherhood. As she stood before her guests, holding Derek's hand, the words felt hollow. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, scanning the familiar faces of friends and family. "Derek and I are overwhelmed by your love and support." But as she spoke about their excitement for parenthood, Catherine found herself studying Derek's face. His smile was perfect, his posture supportive, but his eyes held a distance that made her feel alone, even while surrounded by loved ones. When she finished speaking, Derek kissed her cheek gently. "Beautiful speech, honey." But his attention was already drifting back toward Sophia. The party wound down successfully by 5 p.m. Guests departed with thanks and promises to visit once the baby arrived. Derek handled cleanup logistics while Catherine rested in their bedroom, grateful for a moment of quiet. She was scrolling through the photographer's preview images when Maya knocked. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, happy, mission accomplished." Catherine showed Maya a photo of them both laughing during the gift opening. "Think we pulled it off." Maya sat on the bed's edge, her expression serious. "Kath, I need to tell you something." Catherine's stomach clenched. "What?" "I asked Sophia some follow-up questions about her business, technical stuff. Her answers were vague, inconsistent. Either she doesn't actually know her own industry, or she was deflecting. Maybe she's just private about proprietary information. Maybe." Maya paused. "I also noticed Derek checking his phone constantly whenever he thought no one was looking. And twice when Sophia spoke, he reacted before she finished sentences, like he knew what she was going to say." Catherine wanted to dismiss Maya's observations as paranoia, but her business instincts were prickling. She'd built her success on reading people, on noticing the details others missed. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just sharing what I observed." Maya stood. "You know I adore you, and I want you to be happy. But I also remember what you taught me about due diligence. Sometimes the most important information is what people don't tell you." After Maya left, Catherine sat in the gathering dusk, watching lights twinkle across the bay. The perfect day was ending perfectly, just as she'd planned. So why did she feel like she was missing something crucial? Catherine woke Monday morning to an empty bed and the sound of Derek's shower running. His phone lay on the nightstand, screen dark, seemingly innocent. She'd never been the type to snoop, had never felt the need to question Derek's privacy. Trust was the foundation of their relationship, but Maya's observations haunted her. When Derek emerged from the bathroom, toweling his hair, Catherine was still in bed, studying his morning routine with new attention. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking his phone immediately, responding to messages with quick taps. "Big day," she asked casually. "The Hartman deal closes this afternoon. Should be straightforward, but you know how these things go." Derek's response was smooth, familiar. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The party took more out of me than I expected." Derek sat on the bed's edge, placing his hand on her belly. For a moment, his attention was completely focused on her, and Catherine felt the familiar warmth of his love. Their sun kicked against Derek's palm, and Derek's smile was genuine. He's going to be a soccer player. Or a CEO. Definitely has strong opinions. Catherine covered Derek's hand with hers. "Derek, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long have you been working with Sophia Chen?" The question was casual, but Catherine watched Derek's micro-expressions with the same intensity she brought to investor meetings. A slight tension around his eyes, a barely perceptible pause before answering. "About 4 months. Why?" "Just curious. She seems to know a lot about our lives. She's thorough, asks good questions. It's why she's been so successful." Derek kissed Catherine's forehead. "I should get going. Love you." After Derek left, Catherine tried to return to her normal routine, but concentration eluded her. She'd built TechFlow by trusting her instincts, by investigating discrepancies until they made sense. The same drive that made her successful in business was now focused on her marriage. She opened her laptop and typed Sophia Chen Import-Export into the search engine. The results were surprisingly sparse. A few professional listings, a LinkedIn profile with minimal details, but nothing substantial. For someone supposedly running a successful international business, Sophia's digital footprint was remarkably light. Catherine's phone rang. Maya. "Morning, Mama. How are you feeling?" "Confused. I think I'm overthinking things." "Want to talk about it?" Catherine found herself describing her morning research, her growing sense that something was wrong. As she spoke, the words sounded paranoid, the concerns of a hormonal pregnant woman looking for problems. "Kath, stop. You're not paranoid. You're experienced. How many times have we researched potential partners or investors? What would you tell a client who found these kinds of inconsistencies?" "I'd tell them to dig deeper." "Exactly. Your marriage doesn't get a pass from due diligence just because it's personal." After hanging up, Catherine sat in her home office, surrounded by the artifacts of her professional success. Awards, photos from company milestones, the whiteboard where she'd first mapped TechFlow's business plan. She'd built her life by asking hard questions and demanding honest answers, but she'd never applied those skills to Derek. Catherine opened a new browser window and began researching more systematically. Sophia's business licenses, trade registrations, anything that would verify her claims. What she found was troubling. The company existed on paper, but its reported activities were minimal. No significant import records, no substantial business relationships beyond Derek's bank. Her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Running late tonight. Client dinner with the Hartman Group. Don't wait up." Another dinner meeting. Catherine tried to remember the last evening Derek had been home before 9 p.m. His explanations were always reasonable, his apologies sincere, but the pattern was unmistakable. He was choosing to be elsewhere. She was still researching when her doctor's office called to confirm her appointment for the next day. routine checkup, ultrasound, the kind of milestone she'd been anticipating sharing with Derek. But when she'd mentioned it last week, his response had been distracted, non-committal. Catherine found Derek's calendar on their shared digital account. The appointment time was blocked out, marked Catherine Doctor. But reviewing his recent entries, she noticed something that made her breath catch. Multiple meetings with Sophia, some scheduled during times Derek had told Catherine he was in other meetings, lunch appointments that had run long enough to overlap with calls he'd supposedly taken from the office. A pattern of deception hiding in plain sight. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to Catherine's stress. She placed both hands on her belly, taking deep breaths. Maybe there were innocent explanations. Maybe she was reading too much into circumstantial evidence. But 30 minutes later, when she called Derek's office to surprise him with lunch plans, his assistant's response chilled her. "Oh, Mrs. Collins, Derek's been out of the office most afternoons lately. I can try his cell, but he's usually unreachable during client meetings." Catherine thanked the assistant and hung up, her hands trembling slightly. Derek had said he'd been working late at the office. His assistant said he'd been out most afternoons. Someone was lying, and Catherine was beginning to suspect it wasn't the assistant. She spent the rest of the day in a fog of growing dread, trying to focus on work while her mind cataloged months of small deceptions. The evening Derek claimed to be at a company retreat, but came home smelling like perfume he'd blamed on a colleague's hug. The weekend business trip that had yielded no visible results or follow-up meetings. The new cologne. The updated wardrobe. The subtle changes she'd attributed to success and maturity. When Derek came home after 10 p.m., apologizing for the late dinner that had run long, Catherine studied his face for signs of deception. He looked tired, slightly disheveled, but his story was detailed and believable. "How was your day?" he asked, settling into bed beside her. "Quiet. Did some research for a potential new client." It wasn't entirely a lie. Catherine was researching someone who might have business with her family. She just wasn't ready to share the results. As Derek fell asleep beside her, Catherine stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. She'd spent her career making decisions based on incomplete information, weighing risks and probabilities. Now she faced the most important decision of her life, and she still didn't have enough data. But she was learning, and what she was learning terrified her. Catherine woke Tuesday morning with renewed determination. If Derek was lying, she needed proof. If he was innocent, she needed to know that too. The uncertainty was worse than any potential truth. Her first call was to David Kim, TechFlow's head of security and Catherine's former MIT roommate. If anyone could help her investigate discreetly, it was David. "Kath, this is unexpected. What's going on? I need a favor, a background check, but it needs to be thorough and completely confidential." "Personal or professional?" Catherine hesitated. "Both. Someone who claims to be an international trade but has an unusually light digital footprint. I need to know if the business is legitimate. Send me what you have. I'll be discreet." Next, Catherine called Derek's office directly, bypassing his assistant. "Collins here." "Hi, honey. It's me. Quick question about tonight's doctor appointment." There was a pause. "Tonight, 4:30, Dr. Martinez. We talked about it last week." Catherine kept her voice light, but her heart was hammering. "Right. Of course. I'll have to juggle some things. But I'll be there." Another pause. "Actually, let me check my calendar and call you back." Catherine hung up and immediately opened their shared calendar. Derek's 4:30 slot was still blocked for her appointment, but as she watched, the entry changed before her eyes. Derek was editing it in real time, adding "urgent Hartman crisis" to the same time slot. Her phone rang within minutes. "Catherine, I'm so sorry. The Hartman deal is imploding. I have to stay and manage the crisis." What kind of crisis? Derek's explanation was detailed, technical, urgent sounding, but Catherine was no longer listening to content. She was analyzing delivery, timing, the same way she evaluated investor pitches. Derek was performing, not reporting. "I understand," she said quietly. "Work comes first." "Don't say it like that. You know this isn't what I want." But Catherine was already wondering what Derek did want, and increasingly, she suspected it wasn't her. That afternoon, Catherine sat alone in Dr. Martinez's waiting room, surrounded by other expectant couples. She'd grown used to attending appointments solo, had rationalized Derek's absences as professional necessity, but watching other fathers-to-be study ultrasound images with obvious excitement, she felt Derek's absence more acutely than ever. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Martinez said during the ultrasound. "Baby's growing beautifully." "Any concerns?" "Just stress," Catherine admitted. "Work and personal stuff." "Stress isn't good for you or baby. Maybe it's time to start delegating more, preparing for maternity leave." Catherine nodded, but she knew work stress wasn't the problem. Work made sense. Work had rules and logic and predictable outcomes. Her marriage had become a mystery she was afraid to solve. Driving home, Catherine noticed a restaurant Derek had mentioned as the site of recent client dinners. On impulse, she pulled into the parking lot and walked inside. "Excuse me," she asked the hostess. "I'm looking for someone who might have dined here recently. Derek Collins." "He's been here several times for business dinners." The young woman's face brightened with recognition. "Oh yes, Mr. Collins. He and his girlfriend are regulars. Usually Tuesday and Thursday evenings. She's lovely, very stylish. Asian, about your age." Catherine felt the words hit her like physical blows. Girlfriend, regulars. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, when Derek had claimed to be working late at the office. "Are they here tonight?" Catherine managed to ask. "Not yet, but they usually arrive around 7. Should I tell them you're looking for them?" "No, thank you." Catherine walked back to her car on unsteady legs. The pregnancy made her feel vulnerable, off balance. But this was different. This was her world tilting off its axis. She sat in the parking lot for several minutes, processing. Derek and Sophia were regulars at this restaurant. They were seen as a couple by strangers. The casual way the hostess had said girlfriend suggested this wasn't new or hidden. Catherine's phone buzzed. A text from Derek. "Crisis meeting running late. Don't wait dinner. Love you." She looked at the timestamp. 6:45 p.m. According to the hostess, Derek and Sophia would arrive at 7. For the first time in her marriage, Catherine felt the full weight of betrayal. Not suspicion, not worry, but knowledge. Derek was lying to her face while she sat alone in a doctor's office, learning about their son's healthy development. Catherine drove home in a daze, her mind automatically cataloging next steps. She needed more evidence, needed to understand the scope of Derek's deception, but she also needed to protect herself and her baby from whatever was coming. At home, she called Maya. "I know," Catherine said when Maya answered. "Know what? Derek's having an affair with Sophia Chen." Maya was quiet for a moment. "How do you know?" Catherine described her afternoon, the restaurant, the hostess's casual reference to Derek's girlfriend. As she spoke, the words felt unreal, like she was describing someone else's life. "Kath, I'm coming over." "No, I need time to think." "You shouldn't be alone right now." "I won't be alone," Catherine said, placing her hand on her belly. "I need to figure out what comes next. But as she sat in her beautiful home, surrounded by the life she and Derek had built together, Catherine realized she had no idea what came next. She'd prepared for every business crisis, every professional challenge. She'd never prepared for her husband to betray her while she carried his child. Outside, the sun was setting over the bay, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. It was beautiful. The kind of evening she and Derek used to share on their balcony, planning their future together. Now Catherine sat alone, planning for a future she'd never imagined needing to face. Catherine spent Wednesday morning in a strange state of calm. The uncertainty that had tortured her for days was gone, replaced by cold clarity. Derek was having an affair. The only questions now were how long it had been going on and what she was going to do about it. Her phone rang at 9 a.m. David Kim. "Kath, you're not going to like what I found." "Tell me." "Sophia Chen's import business is essentially fictional. She has the paperwork, but no actual inventory, no shipping records, no real transactions except small amounts that look like money laundering. Either she's terrible at her job, or the business is a front." Catherine absorbed this information without surprise. "What else?" "Property records show she's been renting a condo downtown for 8 months. Expensive place. Way above what her declared income could support. The lease application lists Derek Collins as a reference. 8 months. Catherine's pregnancy was 7 months along. The timeline made her nauseated. "There's more. I pulled Derek's credit report, the public portions. He's been making regular payments on something that doesn't match your known accounts. Could be another property. Could be supporting someone else's expenses." "David, thank you. Send me everything." "Kath, are you okay? Do you need help with anything else?" "I need to know about Derek's business travel. The trips he claimed were work-related. Can you verify those?" "Give me another day." After hanging up, Catherine sat in her home office, staring out at the bay. 8 months of lies. 8 months of Derek living a double life while she planned their future together. She felt hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made her who she was. Her laptop chimed with an email from Derek. "Dinner tonight. I know I've been distracted lately. Want to make it up to you." Catherine stared at the message for a long time. This was Derek's pattern, she realized. Periods of distance followed by sudden attention, gestures that made her feel guilty for doubting him. Classic manipulation. The same tactics she'd seen bad business partners use. She typed back, "That sounds nice. Where should we go?" Derek's response was immediate. "Surprise. Pick you up at 7. Catherine spent the day making preparations. She called her lawyer, Martin Webb, who'd handled TechFlows Incorporation and various business contracts. She made an appointment for Friday morning, telling him only that she needed to discuss protecting assets during a potential major life change. She also called Dr. Martinez's office and requested copies of all her prenatal records, including the ultrasound images Derek had missed. If this marriage was ending, she wanted documentation of Derek's absence from their son's development. At 6:30, Catherine dressed carefully in a black maternity dress that made her look powerful despite her pregnancy. She applied makeup with extra attention, not because she wanted to look beautiful for Derek, but because she wanted to look strong. Derek arrived precisely at 7, looking handsome and attentive. He kissed her cheek gently and placed his hand on her belly, asking about the baby with what seemed like genuine concern. "Where are we going?" Catherine asked as Derek helped her into his car. "Antonio's. You love their pasta, and they have that chocolate dessert you've been craving." Antonio's was their special place, where Derek had proposed 3 years earlier. Catherine realized this was another manipulation tactic, used sentiment and shared history to make her feel guilty for questioning him. But Catherine was past guilt. She was in information-gathering mode. Over appetizers, Catherine asked casual questions about Derek's work, his clients, his recent travel. Derek answered smoothly, his stories consistent and detailed. But Catherine noticed that he never mentioned Sophia, despite David's information suggesting she was a major part of Derek's recent activities. The Hartman deal finally closed, Catherine asked, remembering Derek's claimed crisis meeting the day before. Actually, it's still in flux. Complex international components. I've been working with a consultant who specializes in Asian markets. There it was. The opening Catherine needed. Anyone I know, Sophia Chen, actually, the woman from your baby shower, she's been invaluable. Catherine nodded as if this was new information. She seems very knowledgeable. Brilliant, really. Understands the Asian markets better than anyone I've worked with. Catherine asked follow-up questions, letting Derek elaborate on Sophia's expertise and contributions. With each answer, Derek dug himself deeper into lies that Catherine now knew were false. Sophia wasn't an international trade expert. She was Derek's mistress with a fake business. During the main course, Derek reached across the table and took Catherine's hand. I know I've been distant lately. Work has been crazy. But that's no excuse. You and the baby are my priorities. And I haven't been acting like it. The apology was well rehearsed, sincere sounding. 3 days earlier, Catherine would have been relieved, would have accepted Derek's explanation and promises. Now she heard it as performance. I understand work pressures, Catherine said quietly. I just want honesty between us. Always. Derek squeezed her hand. Of course. We've always been honest with each other. The lie was so blatant, so casually delivered, that Catherine felt something inside her turn to ice. Derek could look her in the eye, hold her hand, and lie without hesitation. She was married to a stranger. Derek, can I ask you something? Anything. If something were wrong in our marriage, you'd tell me, wouldn't you? You wouldn't let me live in a fantasy while you dealt with reality alone. Derek's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been guilt or fear, but his voice remained steady. Catherine, what's this about? Is something wrong? I'm pregnant and emotional. Sometimes I worry that I don't really know what's going on in your life. You know everything important. We're partners. Another lie. Catherine squeezed Derek's hand back, smiling sadly. I'm glad we had tonight. It feels like it's been a long time since we really talked. On the drive home, Derek was relaxed, apparently convinced that his romantic gesture had soothed Catherine's concerns. He talked about plans for the nursery, ideas for baby names, his excitement about becoming a father. Catherine listened, wondering if any of it was real or if Derek was simply that skilled at compartmentalizing his lies. At home, Derek was affectionate, attentive, the husband Catherine remembered falling in love with, but she felt like she was being embraced by a ghost, a memory of someone who might never have existed. As Derek fell asleep beside her, Catherine stared at the ceiling, her mind working through options. She could confront Derek directly, demand the truth, give him a chance to confess and seek forgiveness. She could file for divorce immediately, strike while she still had some element of surprise, or she could gather more information, build a case, prepare for whatever Derek's next move might be. Catherine placed her hands on her belly, feeling her son's movements. Whatever she decided, she wasn't just protecting herself anymore. She was protecting her child from a father who might not be the man she'd thought she married. The decision was already forming in her mind. She would gather evidence, build her case, and then she would act. But she wouldn't wait much longer. Thursday morning brought the first major crack in Catherine's composure. She was reviewing TechFlow's quarterly reports when her phone rang with a call from their bank's private wealth manager. "Mrs. Collins, I wanted to follow up on yesterday's transfer request from your joint account." Catherine's blood ran cold. "What transfer request?" "The $50,000 wire to the Marina District Properties account. Mr. Collins said it was for a real estate investment you discussed." "I never discussed any real estate investment." Catherine's voice was sharp enough that the baby kicked, responding to her stress. "Oh, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. Mr. Collins said you'd authorized it, but were busy with doctor appointments." Catherine closed her eyes. Derek had used her pregnancy, her doctor appointments, as cover for financial fraud. "Please reverse that transfer immediately and flag our account for any additional activity." "Mrs. Collins, I'll need both account holders to approve changes to the account status. Then freeze the account until we can meet in person. Today?" After hanging up, Catherine sat in stunned silence. Derek wasn't just having an affair. He was stealing their money to fund it. $50,000. Probably for Sophia's expensive downtown condo. Her phone buzzed with David's promised follow-up report. "Kath, Derek's business travel is completely fabricated. The conferences he claimed to attend either didn't exist or he wasn't registered. The hotels he expensed don't have records of his stays. But I found credit card records for those same dates at luxury resorts, always with 2 occupants." Catherine's hands were shaking as she read David's detailed report. Derek had been taking romantic vacations with Sophia while telling Catherine he was working. He'd been billing their joint account for fictional business trips that were actually adulterous getaways. The scope of Derek's deception was breathtaking. Not just an affair, but systematic financial fraud, elaborate lies that required careful planning and execution. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a recent mistake. This was a calculated campaign to deceive Catherine while stealing from her. Her phone rang again. Derek. "Hi, honey. How's your morning?" Catherine looked at the bank documents, David's report, the evidence of months of betrayal. "Fine. Busy. I was thinking of coming home for lunch. We could go over baby names, maybe start planning the nursery layout." The casual domesticity of Derek's suggestion, offered while he was actively stealing from her, made Catherine feel physically ill. "I'll be at the office. Maybe dinner instead." "Sure. Love you." Catherine hung up and immediately called Maya. "Emergency meeting. My office. Now." Maya arrived within 30 minutes, took one look at Catherine's face, and closed the door behind her. What happened? Catherine laid out everything: David's reports, the bank transfer, the fictional business trips, the timeline of Derek's lies. As she spoke, Maya's expression grew increasingly grim. "Kath, this is serious. Not just adultery, but financial fraud. You need to protect yourself legally and financially. I know. I have a lawyer appointment tomorrow." Maya studied the bank documents. 50,000 is just what you caught. There could be more. You need to assume Derek has been systematically looting your joint assets. Catherine had built TechFlow by planning for worst-case scenarios, but she'd never imagined her husband would be the threat she needed to plan against. "Maya, I need to know how bad this is. Can you help me trace all the joint accounts, investments, everything Derek had access to?" "Of course. But Kath, if Derek realizes you're investigating, he won't. I'm going to act normal until I understand the full scope of the damage." But even as Catherine said it, she wondered if she could maintain the pretense. Sitting across from Derek at dinner, watching him lie to her face, would require acting skills she wasn't sure she possessed. That afternoon, Catherine and Maya worked systematically through Catherine's financial records. The pattern of Derek's theft emerged slowly, hidden in transfers that looked legitimate, Investments that didn't exist, expenses that had been cleverly disguised. Over 8 months, Derek had stolen nearly $200,000 from their joint accounts. Money Catherine had earned, money she'd saved for their son's future, money Derek had redirected to fund his affair with Sophia. "He's been planning this for months," Maya said quietly. "This isn't impulsive. This is systematic preparation for leaving you." Catherine placed her hands on her belly, feeling her son respond to her stress with increased movement. She was 7 months pregnant, financially devastated, married to a man who was actively working to destroy her future. But she wasn't helpless. She'd built a successful company from nothing. She'd navigated hostile business environments, overcome impossible odds, outmaneuvered competitors who'd underestimated her. Derek had made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated her too. "Maya, I need you to help me with something. I want to set a trap." What kind of trap? Catherine's mind was working with the cold precision she brought to her most challenging business problems. Derek thought he was controlling the narrative, managing the timeline of his deception, but Catherine was about to change the rules of engagement. "Derek thinks I don't know anything. He's gotten comfortable, careless. I want to create a situation where he has to choose between maintaining his lies and protecting what he thinks is his secret." Maya leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time Derek learned that he's not the only one who can plan ahead." Catherine spent the evening crafting her strategy. She would need perfect timing, careful preparation, and the ability to maintain her performance until the critical moment. But for the first time since discovering Derek's betrayal, Catherine felt something other than pain and fear. She felt the cold satisfaction of a predator who'd finally located her prey. Friday morning, Catherine met with Martin Webb in his downtown office. The lawyer, a sharp-eyed man in his 50s who'd helped Catherine navigate complex business deals, listened to her story with professional calm. "Mrs. Collins, I need to be direct. This isn't just marital discord. Your husband has committed multiple felonies, wire fraud, theft, possibly money laundering. The district attorney would be very interested in this evidence." Catherine had prepared for this conversation. "Right now, I want to focus on protecting my interests and my child's future. The criminal aspects can wait." "Understood. First priority is securing your assets and establishing a paper trail of his financial crimes. I'll file an emergency motion to freeze all joint accounts and secure temporary spousal support." "How long before Derek knows legal action has started?" "He'll be served within 48 hours. Catherine nodded. The timeline was tight, but it gave her the window she needed. "Martin, I want to make sure Derek can't claim I was vindictive or emotional. I want everything documented, professional, bulletproof." "We'll make sure of that." Catherine left the lawyer's office feeling more in control than she had in days. Maya was waiting in the car, having spent the morning gathering additional financial evidence. "How did it go?" "Martin's filing the papers this afternoon. Derek will be served by Sunday." "And your plan for tonight?" Catherine's plan was audacious, risky, and perfectly suited to her personality. She was going to force Derek's hand by making him choose between his two lives in real time. "I'm going to tell Derek I want to have dinner with Sophia. As couples, I want to get to know his important business partner better." Maya's eyes widened. "Kath, that's brilliant or insane. Both." Catherine had spent her career reading people, understanding motivations, predicting behavior. Derek thought he was managing two separate relationships, keeping his worlds apart through careful scheduling and elaborate lies. But Catherine was about to collapse those worlds into one space and see how Derek handled the collision. "If Derek refuses, I'll know he's protecting the affair. If he agrees, I'll watch them interact and gather more evidence. Either way, I learned something useful. That afternoon, Catherine called Derek at his office. "Hi, honey. I've been thinking about what you said about Sophia being so important to your work. I'd love to get to know her better. What if we invited her and her boyfriend to dinner this weekend?" There was a long pause. Catherine could practically hear Derek's mind racing. Her boyfriend. She must be seeing someone. A successful woman like that doesn't stay single long. Another pause. "I'm not sure about her personal life. We keep things professional. Even better, maybe we can set her up with someone. I know several eligible men from TechFlow." Catherine was enjoying this. Every word was designed to force Derek into an impossible position. He couldn't admit Sophia didn't have a boyfriend without revealing how much he knew about her personal life. He couldn't explain why a business dinner would be inappropriate without admitting their relationship wasn't purely professional. "Catherine, I don't think mixing business and personal—" "Oh, come on, it's just dinner. Besides, I want to thank her for that beautiful mobile she gave us. It was so thoughtful." Derek was trapped. Refusing would require explanations he couldn't give. Agreeing meant putting his affair and his marriage in the same room. "Let me ask her," Derek said finally. "Great. How about tomorrow night, Antonio's again? We had such a lovely time there." After hanging up, Catherine allowed herself a small smile. Derek would spend the next 24 hours in agony, trying to figure out how to manage the dinner without exposing himself. Sophia would be equally stressed, forced to play the role of innocent business associate while sitting across from the wife of her lover. Maya called an hour later. Derek just made 3 phone calls, all to the same number, all less than 2 minutes long. He's panicking. Good. Panicked people make mistakes. That evening, Derek came home looking haggard. He was distracted during dinner, checking his phone constantly, his usual charm replaced by obvious anxiety. "Everything okay?" Catherine asked innocently. "Just work stuff. The Hartman deal is getting complicated again." Catherine nodded sympathetically. "Maybe Sophia can help. She seems so knowledgeable about these complex international transactions." Derek's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Actually, she might be too busy for dinner tomorrow. Her schedule's pretty packed." "Oh, that's too bad. I was really looking forward to meeting her properly. Maybe we could do drinks instead. Less formal." Catherine was relentless, each suggestion designed to increase Derek's stress. She watched him struggle to find excuses that wouldn't raise suspicions. "I'll see what I can arrange," Derek said weakly. That night, as Derek tossed restlessly beside her, Catherine lay awake planning. Tomorrow would be the performance of her life. She would sit across from her husband and his mistress, playing the role of innocent wife while gathering evidence for her divorce. But Catherine wasn't just planning for dinner. She was planning for war. Derek thought he'd been clever, thought he'd managed his deception perfectly. But he'd made a crucial mistake. He'd underestimated the woman he'd married. Catherine had built her success by staying 3 moves ahead of her competition. She'd analyzed Derek's weaknesses, predicted his responses, and prepared for every contingency. Tomorrow night, Derek would learn that his wife wasn't the trusting, naive woman he thought he'd been manipulating. She was his equal in every way. And she'd been preparing for this battle while he'd been distracted by his illusions of control. The trap was set. All Catherine had to do was wait for her prey to walk into it. Saturday evening arrived with unseasonable fog rolling in from the bay, a gray shroud that seemed to match Catherine's mood. She dressed carefully in a navy blue dress that flattered her pregnancy while projecting quiet authority. Tonight would require the performance of her lifetime. Derek had been agitated all day. making and receiving hushed phone calls, disappearing to his home office for long periods. When Catherine asked about the dinner arrangements, his responses were vague and increasingly strained. "Sophia's running late with another client," Derek said as they prepared to leave. "She might join us for dessert instead of the full dinner." Catherine smiled serenely. "Of course. Business comes first. I completely understand." They arrived at Antonio's at 7:30. The hostess seated them at a corner table with a view of the bay, the same table where Derek had proposed 3 years earlier. Catherine wondered if he remembered, or if sentiment had been another casualty of his transformation into someone she no longer recognized. Derek was checking his phone obsessively, his leg bouncing with nervous energy under the table. Catherine ordered sparkling water and asked the waiter about the evening's specials, maintaining perfect calm while studying her husband's disintegration. At 8:15, Sophia appeared in the restaurant's entrance, scanning the room until she spotted their table. She approached with obvious reluctance, her usual confident bearing replaced by visible tension. "Catherine, Derek, I'm so sorry I'm late. Client crisis." Sophia looked stunning, as always. But Catherine noticed details that hadn't been apparent at the baby shower. The expensive jewelry that seemed disproportionate to a struggling import business. The designer handbag that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The way her eyes avoided Catherine's while seeking Derek's for reassurance. "No problem at all," Catherine said warmly. "We ordered appetizers. Derek was just telling me how invaluable you've been with the Hartman project." Sophia's smile looked painful. "I'm just glad I could help." Catherine had prepared for this dinner like a military campaign. Every question was designed to reveal inconsistencies, every comment crafted to increase the stress level of her targets. She asked about Sophia's business with innocent curiosity, noting how Derek jumped in to answer questions Sophia should have handled easily. "Your import business sounds fascinating," Catherine said. "Derek mentioned you specialize in semiconductors. That must require extensive travel to Asia." "Some travel, yes," Sophia replied carefully. "Which ports do you primarily use for shipping?" I ask, because TechFlow has been exploring international supply chains, and I'm always interested in learning from successful entrepreneurs. It was a perfectly reasonable question that any legitimate importer could answer instantly. Sophia's hesitation was telling. "We work with several different ports, depending on the specific requirements." Derek interrupted. "Sophia's very strategic about her logistics, security concerns. You understand?" Catherine nodded as if this explanation made perfect sense, but she noticed how Derek's hand moved closer to Sophia's on the table before catching himself. She saw the way Sophia's breathing became shallow when Derek spoke. Most importantly, she observed the micro-expressions of two people who knew each other far more intimately than their words suggested. As the evening progressed, Catherine maintained her role as the gracious, slightly naive wife, while Derek and Sophia struggled to play business associates. The stress was visible in Derek's forced laughter, Sophia's careful word choices, the way they avoided looking at each other directly. During the main course, Catherine excused herself to use the restroom. As she walked away from the table, she glanced back and saw Derek and Sophia lean toward each other, their facades dropping for just a moment. Even from a distance, their body language screamed intimacy. When Catherine returned, both Derek and Sophia were sitting stiffly upright, their professional masks back in place. "I hope you don't mind, but I asked the waiter to recommend a wine for you two," Catherine said pleasantly. "I can't drink, but I wanted you to enjoy yourselves." Derek looked confused. "When did you—" "While I was gone. I know how much you both work. You deserve to relax." It was a small power play, demonstrating that Catherine could orchestrate events even when she wasn't present. But it also served a more practical purpose. Wine would lower their inhibitions, make them more likely to slip. As Sophia sipped her wine, she began to relax slightly. "This is lovely, Catherine. Thank you. Of course, I imagine you and Derek don't often get to socialize outside of work meetings." Another pause, another exchange of glances between Derek and Sophia. "Not often, no," Sophia said. "That's too bad. Derek's told me so much about your expertise. I feel like I know you already." Catherine was enjoying watching them squirm. Every innocent comment was loaded with subtext, every smile calculated to increase their paranoia. She was playing with them the way a cat plays with mice, demonstrating her power while maintaining perfect deniability. During dessert, Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Legal papers filed. Derek will be served first thing Monday morning." Catherine glanced at the message and smiled. Good news from Maya about a TechFlow contract. Sometimes weekend work pays off. Derek and Sophia both looked relieved that Catherine's attention was momentarily elsewhere, not realizing that the good news would destroy Derek's life within 48 hours. As they prepared to leave, Catherine insisted on taking a photo. For Derek's office, it's nice to put faces with the names of important business partners. Derek looked horrified, but couldn't refuse without seeming strange. The three of them posed together, Catherine beaming while Derek and Sophia looked like they were facing a firing squad. "This was wonderful," Catherine said as they parted ways in the parking lot. "We should do it again soon." Driving home, Derek was silent, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Catherine let the quiet stretch, knowing he was wrestling with how much she might have observed. "Sophia seems nice," Catherine said finally. "Yes, very professional. Attractive too. I'm surprised she's single." Derek's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't know about her personal life." Another lie, delivered with less conviction than usual. Derek's performance was deteriorating under pressure. At home, Derek disappeared into his office while Catherine prepared for bed. She could hear him on the phone, his voice low and urgent, making damage control calls, she assumed, trying to reassure Sophia that Catherine suspected nothing. But Catherine suspected everything. More than that, she knew everything. And in 36 hours, Derek would discover that his wife wasn't the trusting fool he'd been playing for months. As she lay in bed, feeling her son's movements, Catherine felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Peace. The performance was over. The trap had worked perfectly. Derek and Sophia had revealed themselves completely while thinking they'd successfully deceived her. Now it was time for the consequences. Sunday morning brought an unexpected call that changed everything. Catherine was enjoying coffee on her balcony, watching early morning joggers along the waterfront when David Kim's number appeared on her phone. "Kath, we have a problem. A big one." Catherine's blood chilled. "What kind of problem?" "I've been monitoring Derek's communications like you asked. This morning, he made arrangements to fly to Singapore tomorrow morning. One-way ticket. He's also been liquidating investments, converting everything to cryptocurrency and offshore accounts." Catherine gripped the phone tighter. "He's running." "It gets worse. He's not going alone. Sophia has a ticket on the same flight. And Kath, there's something else. Something I found when I dug deeper into their communications." Catherine closed her eyes, preparing for another devastating revelation. Sophia isn't pregnant with Derek's child. She never was. The whole thing was a setup from the beginning. She's a professional con artist with at least 3 different identities. This isn't Derek's first marriage she's helped destroy. The information hit Catherine like a physical blow. Not only had Derek betrayed her, but he'd been manipulated by someone who made deception a career. Their entire relationship, everything Catherine had discovered over the past week, was part of a larger con game. David, are you sure? Positive. Sophia Chen doesn't exist. Her real name is Sarah Kim, and she's wanted in connection with similar schemes in Seattle and Portland. She targets successful married men, creates fictional business relationships, then systematically loots their assets before disappearing. Catherine felt strangely relieved. Derek wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a victim too, but that didn't excuse his choices or the pain he'd caused her. How long do we have before they leave? Their flight is at 6 a.m. tomorrow. But Kath, I think they're planning to clean out every account they can access tonight. Derek's been moving money all weekend. Catherine's mind raced through options. The legal papers wouldn't be served until Monday morning, too late to stop Derek from fleeing the country. She needed to act immediately. David, can you track their current location? Derek's phone is at their house. Sophia's last known location was the downtown condo. Catherine made a decision that surprised even her. I'm going to confront them. Tonight. Both of them. Kath, that's not safe, especially with the baby. I won't be alone, and I won't be unprepared. Catherine spent the afternoon making preparations. She called Maya, explained the situation, and outlined her plan. Maya was horrified, but agreed to help. She also called Martin Webb, who arranged for a court order freezing all of Derek's accounts, effective immediately. By evening, Catherine was ready. She'd prepared what she privately called her nuclear option, a strategy so comprehensive and devastating that Derek and Sophia would have no choice but to face the consequences of their actions. At 8 p.m., Catherine drove to Sophia's downtown condo with Maya following in a separate car. They'd agreed on signals, escape routes, and backup plans. Catherine was taking no chances with her safety or her babies. The building's lobby was elegant, expensive, clearly funded by stolen money from Derek and possibly other victims. Catherine used the intercom to call Sophia's apartment. Sophia, it's Catherine Collins. I need to speak with you. There was a long pause before Sophia's voice came through. Carefully controlled, Catherine, what are you doing here? I think you know. May I come up? Another pause. Of course. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt endless. Catherine's heart was pounding, but her mind was crystal clear. She'd rehearsed this confrontation, prepared for various responses, planned her words carefully. Sophia opened the door wearing casual clothes, her usual polished appearance replaced by obvious stress. Behind her, Catherine could see Derek pacing in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. This is unexpected, Sophia said, not moving aside to let Catherine enter. I imagine it is. We need to talk. All three of us. Derek appeared behind Sophia, his face pale. Catherine, what's going on? Catherine looked at her husband, the man she'd loved and trusted and built a life with. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by the context of his deception. I know, Catherine said simply. I know about the affair, the stolen money, the fake business, the plane tickets to Singapore. I know about Sarah Kim and her previous victims in Seattle and Portland. The effect was immediate and devastating. Sophia's mask of control cracked completely. Derek's phone slipped from his nerveless fingers. I know you've been planning to disappear with our son's college fund, our retirement savings, and probably money stolen from Sophia's other targets. What I'm here to tell you is that it's over. Catherine stepped past Sophia into the apartment, her presence commanding despite her pregnancy. The space was beautiful, expensive, furnished with money that had been stolen from Catherine's family. As of this afternoon, all accounts you have access to are frozen. The FBI has been notified about Sophia's identity theft and interstate fraud, and Derek, You're going to be served with divorce papers tomorrow morning, along with criminal charges for embezzlement and wire fraud. Derek found his voice. Catherine, please, let me explain. Explain what that you've been stealing from your pregnant wife to fund a relationship with a professional criminal, that you were planning to flee the country tomorrow morning, that you've been lying to me for 8 months while I carried your child. Catherine's voice was steady, controlled, but filled with an authority that made both Derek and Sophia take a step back. Sophia tried to regain control of the situation. Catherine, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Sarah. Or do you prefer one of your other names? I have a complete file on your criminal history, your previous victims, your methods of operation. The police are very interested in meeting you. Catherine reached into her purse and pulled out a thick folder. This contains everything: bank records, communication transcripts, travel documents, witness statements. You made one crucial mistake, both of you. You assumed I was too trusting, too naive, too distracted by pregnancy to notice what you were doing. She looked directly at Derek. You forgot that I built a successful business by being smarter than people who underestimated me. You forgot that I know how to investigate, how to build cases, how to destroy people who threaten what I've built. Derek was shaking. Catherine, I never wanted to hurt you. I got in over my head. You made choices, Derek. Every lie, every stolen dollar, every moment you sat in my home planning to abandon your family. Those were conscious decisions. Catherine turned to leave, then paused. Your flight leaves at 6 a.m. The FBI will be waiting at the airport. I'd suggest you use the time to call lawyers instead of packing. As Catherine walked toward the door, Sophia made one last desperate attempt. What do you want, money? We can work something out. Catherine smiled, a cold expression that held no warmth. I want justice. And I want my son to grow up knowing his mother was strong enough to protect him from people who would have destroyed his future. Catherine left Derek and Sophia in their expensive apartment, surrounded by the evidence of their crimes, facing the consequences they'd never expected to encounter. In the elevator, Catherine placed her hands on her belly, feeling her son's movements. She'd protected him. She'd protected herself. She'd turned the tables on people who thought they could manipulate and discard her. The battle was over. Catherine had won. 3 months later, Catherine sat in her redesigned home office, nursing her 3-week-old son while reviewing TechFlow's latest quarterly reports. Leo was a content baby, sleeping well and growing steadily, as if he'd inherited his mother's determination to thrive despite challenging circumstances. The transformation of Catherine's life had been swift and comprehensive. Derek pled guilty to embezzlement and wire fraud, receiving a 2-year sentence and agreeing to full restitution. Sophia, whose real name was indeed Sarah Kim, faced federal charges across multiple states and would likely spend the next decade in prison. The divorce was finalized with Catherine retaining full custody of Leo, the house, and the majority of their recovered assets. Derek's parental rights were contingent on completing his sentence and undergoing court-mandated counseling, conditions Catherine doubted he'd fulfill. Maya knocked on the office door, carrying coffee and the satisfied expression of someone who'd helped orchestrate a successful campaign. How are my favorite mother and CEO doing this morning? Thriving, Catherine replied, adjusting Leo in her arms. Ready for the TechFlow board meeting. Ready to watch you terrify venture capitalists while holding a baby. Absolutely. Catherine had decided not to take extended maternity leave, instead adapting her schedule to accommodate both motherhood and running her company. The board had initially expressed concern about her ability to maintain focus, but Catherine's performance over the past 3 months had silenced all doubts. If anything, The experience of uncovering and defeating Derek's deception had sharpened Catherine's business instincts. She was more decisive, more confident, and less tolerant of people who wasted her time with manipulation or half-truths. "Any word from David about the Seattle investigation?" Catherine asked. Maya nodded grimly. 2 more victims identified. Sarah Kim's total theft is estimated at over $1.2 million across 4 relationships. Your evidence was crucial in building the federal case. Catherine felt satisfaction mixed with sympathy for Derek's fellow victims. None of them had been as fortunate as Catherine in detecting the deception before losing everything. "What about Derek's mother? Has she tried to contact you about seeing Leo?" "Twice last week. I'm not ready for that conversation yet." Catherine's relationship with Derek's family was complicated. His mother, Diane, had initially blamed Catherine for Derek's downfall, suggesting that a more supportive wife would have prevented his descent into crime. But as the evidence became public, Diane had been forced to confront the reality of her son's choices. "She'll keep trying," Maya observed. "Leo is her only grandchild. And Derek is her only son. When she's ready to acknowledge what he did to his family, we can discuss supervised visits. But not before." Catherine had learned to protect her boundaries with the same intensity she brought to business negotiations. Leo's safety and stability were non-negotiable priorities. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Catherine's housekeeper answered, returning with a delivery of flowers and a card. "From Martin Webb's law firm," the housekeeper explained. The card read, "Congratulations on TechFlow's expansion announcement. Looking forward to supporting your continued success, the Webb legal team." Catherine smiled. That morning's Wall Street Journal had featured a front-page article about TechFlow's acquisition of 2 smaller companies and Catherine's plans for international expansion. The business she'd built was thriving, apparently strengthened rather than weakened by the personal crisis she'd navigated. "Speaking of success," Maya said, pulling out her phone, "you should see the response to yesterday's Forbes interview." The interview had been Catherine's first detailed public discussion of her experience with Derek's deception and her process of rebuilding. She'd been careful to focus on lessons learned rather than personal details, but the response had been overwhelming. 1,200 comments so far, 95% positive. Women especially are resonating with your message about trusting your instincts and not ignoring red flags. Catherine had received dozens of private messages from women in similar situations, thanking her for sharing her story and asking for advice. She was considering establishing a foundation to help victims of financial fraud, particularly women facing divorce while pregnant or with young children. "Any interesting business inquiries?" 3 potential board positions, 5 speaking engagements, and 1 very intriguing partnership proposal from a cybersecurity firm that specializes in helping fraud victims recover assets. Catherine adjusted Leo, who was making soft, contented sounds. Her son would grow up knowing his mother as a woman who'd faced a crisis and emerged stronger. He'd learned that strength wasn't about avoiding difficulties, but about responding to them with intelligence and determination. The afternoon sun streamed through the office windows, illuminating the bay view that Catherine had once shared with Derek. Now it was hers alone, a vista of possibilities rather than shared deceptions. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, saw the Forbes article, "Proud of you. D." Derek, reaching out from prison, still trying to insert himself into her narrative. Catherine deleted the message without responding. She'd said everything she needed to say to Derek during their final court appearance, when she'd looked him in the eye and told the judge that her son deserved better than a father who would steal from his own family. Maya noticed Catherine's momentary pause. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," Catherine replied, and realized she meant it. Her marriage had been built on lies, but her new life was constructed on truth. Her trust had been betrayed, but her judgment had been vindicated. She'd been abandoned by someone she'd loved, but she discovered strength she hadn't known she possessed. As Leo settled into sleep in her arms, Catherine looked out at the bay and felt something she hadn't experienced in months: complete peace. She'd protected her son, preserved her business, and emerged from betrayal with her integrity intact. The perfect day Derek had promised her years ago had finally arrived, but it looked nothing like either of them had imagined. It looked like Catherine, alone and unafraid, building a future worthy of the child she held and the woman she'd become. Sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we rebuild from the ashes of our greatest betrayals. Catherine's story reminds us that strength isn't measured by what we endure, but by how we choose to rise.